There's nothing more fundamental to business success than the value chain. CEOs at physical asset operators are dealing with an AI-native landscape where the worth of everything has the potential to change daily. Instead of meeting these challenges with new value chain strategies or postures, the dominant AI playbook falls into the same old trap. And the reason it falls into the trap isn't that the playbook is new and untested, is that the playbook isn't at all new. Welcome to the Enduring Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Alexander. This podcast is for physical asset operators who are setting the stage for what comes next. For the record, the advice firms have bolted AI onto the same playbooks they were running pre-AI revolution. Same diagnostic moves, same remediation patterns, same exit infrastructure dressed up as next-gen development. It's the same trap that's been there for 30 years. They just bolted on an AI interface. The trap is called the remediation trap. The remediation trap is a diagnostic sleight of hand that advice firms use to place all the blame on project failures on the company's operators. It absolves senior executives and the advice givers from any actions taken by the operators. In case you missed it, both executives and advice givers need to be absolved so that they can continue to work together. If either of them can be blamed for the failures, then the jig is up. The dance is over. However, we don't have time to talk about the sweetheart deals between some executives and advice givers. Let's concentrate on what we see when advice givers bolt AI onto time-worn assets like operational playbooks. The big idea is to extend the revenue potential of deprecated IP. Advice content that's long past its sell-by date. It takes time to refresh IP, time that's in short supply when all hands are dedicated to shoring up revenue shortfalls. Let's be clear. There are a lot of senior people who are going to be casualties of the AI revolution, not because they're incompetent, but because they won't give themselves permission to change their identity. What's needed is the discipline to change. You got to be willing to name the exposure, to identify the threat the AI revolution poses to who you've been. For most senior leaders, that's the recognition that the operational expertise they built isn't enough by itself. Next, describe the anchor, the judgment, the operational knowledge, the patterns you built that are deprecated because of the AI revolution. 20 years of pattern recognition just doesn't go away because the playbook has a new AI interface bolted on. Share the beta. Don't hoard what you've learned. There's no leverage in it. Also, incorporate information from other senior people who've made the transition. What's worked, what didn't, what the early movers can learn from those who are just taking the plunge. Finally, activate the change. Celebrate the first commissioning decision that operates from your changed identity. Not motivation, not insight, action. Let's go back to the beginning and ask, what is AI native? For a lot of advice givers, AI native is a marketing attribute. It has no meaning because their firms have never really spent any time thinking about it. It's the marketing equivalent of the magic stars that software vendors use to show that their tools have an AI component. For CEOs at physical asset operators, what it means to be AI native has 6 structural tests. Every AI initiative, every architecture, every deployment, every value chain redesign has to pass all 6 to be AI native in any meaningful sense. First, institutional knowledge is the asset, not the AI. The firm's compounding asset is what has been captured, not what has been rented from a vendor. Second, value structural readiness over motivational readiness. There are 4 orders of readiness: organizational, process management, technical, and trustworthiness. Enthusiasm and training completion are not substitutes. Third, judgment captured, not extracted. Institutional knowledge is captured at the operational moment when judgment is exercised. It's not extracted through surveys or questionnaires. And you have to be skeptical of it when it's mined from existing documents without any mechanism for validation. Fourth, the system contains AI. AI does not contain the system. AI handles the interface. Traditional code handles consistency. Governance modules enforce boundaries. These are the 3 composing actors. Fifth, operators are mission specialists, not task supervisors. Operators own mission outcomes. They launch, monitor, override, and accept responsibility for what the system produces. 6. Design is for compounding, not deploying. The success criteria happens after deployment. Does institutional knowledge thicken? Do patterns emerge? Do cross-silo knowledge transfer occur? Deployment is the start, not the finish. 6 tests. If your AI initiative fails any one of them, it's not AI native. Now let's talk about how this applies to AI native value chain design. AI native is a design pattern. Like any design pattern, it has defining characteristics, the 6 tests we just named. Your AI architecture matches the AI native design pattern when all 6 characteristics are in place. Value chain design isn't new. Strategy literature has been working on it for decades, and design thinking has been applied to value chain work for at least the last 15 years. Jean Ledecker named value chain analysis as one of the design thinking's 10 tools. She is widely regarded as one of the foremost academic authorities on applying design thinking to business strategy and management problems. The combination has been clear in the literature. Design thinking creates new value, traditional efficiency methodologies capture it, and together they produce enduring advantage. That combination is sound. The AI native value chain design is not replacing it. The enduring advantage framework is extending it. Here's the extension. Design thinking takes you through empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. The AI native design pattern contributes the 6 tests needed to make the value design relevant to the AI revolution. Does it honor institutional knowledge as the asset? Does it require structural readiness? Does it capture judgment? Does it run on the 3 composing actors? Does it position operators as mission specialists? Does it design for compounding value? If the design fails any of the tests, it's a candidate for refinement and not fit for purpose. That gives you the formula. Design thinking creates value. Efficiency methodologies capture it. The AI native principles preserve it through the AI revolution. 3 terms, 1 equation. Design thinking plus efficiency methodologies plus AI native principles equals enduring advantage. Before we go to what comes next, here's what's worth being clear about. The enduring advantage framework isn't AI competency training. It's not an upscaling program. It's not an assessment of where you are on someone's AI maturity model. The enduring advantage framework isn't here to teach you what AI is or what you should do with it. It's about using what you have that no framework can replace, your operational expertise. You know what your operation actually requires to function. You know which of your suppliers are reliable under pressure. You know which of your operators have enough judgment that doesn't show up in the SOPs. That knowledge is a substrate that the Enduring Advantage framework composes with, not the content the framework is trying to replace. What's coming next is a discussion of AI native value chain design from 4 different professional vantage points. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the CEO's view we've been discussing throughout this episode. There are other views like the procurement view, the process engineer's view, the HR hiring manager view. These aren't translations of the executive content into other professionals' languages. They're separate renderings of the same architectural structure, generated using each profession's functional concerns. The framework's preservation discipline operates across every professional function in your firm, not just at the executive layer where you sit, but at every layer where AI native thinking can be executed. What you'll be commissioning when you commission an AI native value chain design is a rendering or view of every designated functional area in your company. The best way to describe complex topics is to say it's like building a house. You've got your foundation, you have got your walls, you have got your windows, and of course you have your roof. However, anyone who has actually sat through the process of choosing what you want in your new home or renovation knows that everything is laid out in elevations or views. The Enduring Advantage framework calls these AI native views. Why have we taken this approach to describing the AI native design pattern? The reason is that different functions within an organization use different languages to describe the same object based on their concerns. For example, the CEO's view of AI native value chain design is likely very different than procurement's view. Now here's why that matters operationally. They aren't just descriptions. They're how you check that the architecture actually holds together. We call that coherence. Architectural elevations matter because it's how we track changes. The earlier you make changes and have them reflected in the elevations, the more likely they are to make it into the home. Generally, building contractors have every intention of adding your wishes into the build. However, everyone knows that at crunch time, things get missed. Same logic for AI native views. When the CEO commits to a change, the question is whether that change propagates. Does it reach procurement's qualification work? Does it reach process engineers' instrumentation? Does it reach HR's hiring? Or does the change get stuck at the executive layer while the operational layers continue implementing the original plan? Coherence isn't a 7th test arriving from outside of the framework. It's how the 6 tests actually get checked. The tests aren't just checked at the architecture level abstractly. They are also checked at the view level operationally. When the CEO has committed to some level of institutional knowledge as a valued asset, but procurement is still operating on supplier capability as the asset, Principle 1 has gotten stuck somewhere between the CEO's view and the procurement view. When the CEO has authorized a change to a more AI native view of employees as mission specialists, but the process engineers are still treating operators as task supervisors, Principle 5 has gotten stuck somewhere between the executive layer and the operational floor. The views are how you find out which principal changes have gotten disconnected and where. They're also how you ensure your program is not fragmenting the organization. You can tell which professional functions are still operating from the pre-AI revolution playbook while the others have crossed into AI native operations. The fragmentation isn't usually intentional. It's what happens when changes get committed at one level and don't propagate to the others. As changes flow through the views, does each view actually pick up what the other views have authorized? If the process view doesn't reflect what the CEO view committed to, the change got stuck. If the procurement doesn't reflect what just qualified by the process view, the change got stuck. If any of the views don't meet the 6 tests, you don't have an AI native value chain design. Let's talk about the CEO view in detail. The CEO operates on commissioning decisions. What architecture is authorized? What strategy to use? Do you use an aggressive drone maker posture or a relatively passive incumbent strategy? What capital do you allocate and where? What direction the firm is committed to? The CEO view of AI native value chain design renders the AI native view through those concerns. Here's what that looks like in practice. When you commission an AI native value chain redesign, you're committing to 6 structural tests at the architectural level. Institutional knowledge as the asset, structural readiness validated, judgment captured, 3 composing actors, mission specialists with override authority, compounding by design. But the commissioning isn't where the work ends. It's where the work starts. The change has to be propagated. Your procurement leads have to qualify suppliers against the new architecture. Your process engineers have to instrument operations to capture judgment. Your hiring managers have to find or convert employees to mission specialists rather than task supervisors. The CEO view sees all of this not as separate work streams, but as one architecture rendering across professional business functions. The coherence check from the CEO's vantage point is whether your commissioning is actually moving the firm in the right direction so it can pass the 6 tests. When you're committed to institutional knowledge as the asset, did your procurement function start qualifying suppliers on knowledge contribution rather than on capability rental? When you authorize mission specialists, did your hiring change? If the change isn't propagating, the architecture isn't AI native yet. Your CEO views tells you that before procurement process engineering or HR has to. That's the operational stance from the CEO's vantage point. You commission, you commit capital, you verify that the commitment is propagating. The view is what you check coherence against. Let's tie this together. You started this episode with a trap operating in your firm, the remediation trap, a diagnostic sleight of hand that absolves your senior executives and advice givers while operators absorb the consequence. Same trap that's been running for 30 years before an AI interface was bolted onto it. Here's what you have now that you didn't have when we started. You have a name for what AI native actually requires. 6 structural tests, not a marketing attribute. Every AI native initiative in your firm passes all 6, or it isn't AI native. You have walked through how value chain design becomes AI native. You've heard the architectural commitment each test requires. Design thinking creates value. Efficiency methodologies capture it. The AI native principles preserve it through the AI revolution. That's the formula. You have AI native views as the way the architecture renders across your firm, the CEO view, the procurement view, the process engineer's view, the HR hiring manager view, as well as others. Same architecture, different professional vantage points, each one generated from that organization's actual work. And you have coherence as a property that tells whether your AI native value chain redesign is actually moving the firm forward. When changes propagate from CEO commissioning through to procurement qualification, process engineering instrumentation, and HR hiring, the architecture is AI native.